reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As this committee is dependent on internet connection and power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on the East Devon website for details if that occurs. Please make sure that all microphones are muted when you are not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Please could I ask participants to keep their points short and try not to repeat points that have already been made, and please do not interrupt other speakers. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand and wait. I'm now moving on to another page. All the councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, although I would put in the caveat that Councillor Jeff Young is substituting late in the day, so may not have had as much time as the rest of us to familiarise himself with the agenda. If there are any members of the public who wish to view the agenda, they may do so by visiting the East Devon website, which is www.eastdevon.gov.uk. I will now start the committee. We have done the roll call and all three councillors are present, so we are quorate. So again, I'm chairing the meeting. I'm Councillor Rachel Sutton, representing Exeter City Council. And I have with me my colleagues, Councillor Martin Wrigley from Team Bridge and Councillor Jeff Young, representing East Devon. Agenda item 1 is public speaking, and I'm told there are no members of the public who have registered to speak. Agenda item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting on pages 3 to 7. If anyone has a comment on the last set of minutes, please would you indicate now?
Chair, you're muted, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm not seeing any comments on the minutes. May we agree?
My electronic hand raised.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Wrigley, I didn't see that. Yes, would you like to raise your point on the minutes?
It's just on my usual declaration of interest. I still am a member. I think there's a small typo, so I am a member and treasurer of the Cockwood Boat Club.
Thank you. Are there any, you have no other comments on the minutes, Martin, no?
No, that was the only one that jumped out at me.
Thank you. And I'm assuming, Councillor Young, that you don't, given that you probably haven't even had a chance to check them out and weren't present at the meeting.
No, I was at the last meeting and it did seem to be fairly accurate, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, agenda item 3. I know that apologies have been sent by Peter Hearn from Exeter City Council, and I believe there are a few other apologies.
Henry Gordon Lennox, Chairman.
Thank you. And is anyone aware of anyone else who has sent their apologies?
Andy Wood's here.
Okay. Fine. Agenda item 5. I'm not aware of any matters of urgency for us to discuss.
Sorry, Chair.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt yet again. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. I just wish to reiterate my same declaration of interest. I still live in a house that looks out over the ex-estuary. In fact, I can see it right now, or I would do if the curtains weren't drawn to stop the sunshine coming in. And I am still a member of and treasurer of the Cockwood Boat Club.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we've got that. Okay. So agenda item 5, there are no matters of urgency that I'm aware of to discuss. Agenda item 6, there are no confidential or exempt items which would require the exclusion of the public or press. So agenda item 7 is the 2019 to 2020 annual business plan annual report. And that, I believe, is going to be presented by Naomi and Neil as a double act, or is one of you taking the lead?
I'm taking the lead on that one, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Would you like to go forward?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. The 1920 annual business plan report is an update on the progress made in delivery of ongoing mitigation measures set out in previous annual business plans, and specifically the previous year's annual business plan. The report covers main items from last year's plan, which include the continued funding of keystone measures, in this case the staff, visitor impact survey at Dawlish Warren, the South East Devon visitor survey, and educational resources for the Pebblebed Heaths. Just to note also, of course, the COVID-19 impacts to delivery throughout the last business plan year. Throughout lockdown, it was no longer possible to continue on-site works or public engagement activities for reasons which will be well understood. Continued presence on social media was thanks to the efforts of our borrowed communications officer. Also like to draw the committee's attention to table 2, new mitigation measures from the 19 and 20 business plan. The South East Devon visitor survey was underway prior to the lockdown, and a number of surveys have been carried out. Lockdown inevitably impacted on the ability to continue with these, and there are strong reasons for postponing the completion of the survey until next year, which include atypical usage patterns associated with the pandemic. In effect, how useful would any data being collected now be, as we're attempting to establish a baseline of data to work from. We also need to consider the safety of staff and the public, especially in the interviewer-interviewee relationship in surveying. And indications are that people at the moment are less willing to be approached and to talk at length. And again, this could affect the quality of the data that's collected. Additionally, we're nearly halfway through the peak visitor season at the Pebblebed Heath, so starting any surveys now, we're kind of missing half of the optimum period. Moving on, the Dawlish Warren Visitor Monitoring Survey has been received, but it's been received too late for this round of reports. But I intend to present them to the next meeting, along with the second annual ex-wildlife refuge monitoring report, which was also received too late for this current round. Also like to draw attention to the issue at Dawlish Warren, which is dealt with in more detail in a later report, but it's the way in which some of the measures in the mitigation strategy could be impacted by the Environment Agency's beach management scheme. As I say, it's considered in more detail in the 2021 annual business plan. Both measures at the Pebblebed Heath are part of the same visitor access work. The results of the consultation on the advisory report were approved by committee at the January 2020 meeting, and the 2021 annual business plan later on in this meeting builds on that work. As reflected in 2.1.2, other significant work not forming part of the annual business plan this year included time spent in liaison with the Environment Agency and Natural England in respect of the Exmouth Tidal Defence Scheme. Unforeseen delays to the scheme meant that construction works adjacent to the Exmouth Wildlife Refuge were scheduled to be carried out throughout the sensitive winter period. Staff helped to devise a programme of avoidance and mitigation measures for the works, which enabled certain aspects of the scheme to continue and halted those considered to pose significant effects, potential significant effects to the birds. As shown in Appendix A to the report, this also included a watching brief which observed the responses of the birds to the works which continued, thereby providing a system by which it would be possible to halt the works if they caused too much disturbance. The remainder of the report and Appendices B through D details the innovative work undertaken by the Habitat Mitigation Officers and the Devon Loves Dogs project officer throughout the previous year, which now builds on a well-established approach. This includes working with partners in delivery and promotion of key behavioural messages through public events, patrols, pit stops, newsletter articles, talks, educational visits, and via social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Naomi, did you want to add anything to that?
Nothing further for myself. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Neil. I'm going to invite Councillor Young and Councillor Wrigley if they wish to make any comments or ask any questions first. Who would like to go first? Councillor Wrigley.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, congratulations, another good year. Well done, lots of good work achieved. There's a few things I'd like to sort of delve into in a little bit more detail, if we may. Now, I fully understand the Dawlish Warren beach management plan issues and all the rest of it, hence the questions that I was asking independently. So I think it's good to see that we are taking account of that impact and doing something about it. That is really excellent. There's a few bits and pieces. So I'm a little worried on page 8 of your report. I think it's paragraph 223. We're talking about
Councillor Wrigley, you've muted yourself again, or someone has.
interesting. I hadn't touched a thing.
Okay, right, you're back.
So where did you lose me?
Can you start from the beginning, please?
Okay, so
you were saying there were a few things.
So section 223 in the report. We're talking in here about an increased number of disturbance events on the water reported by the HMOs. And we're talking about work is underway to revise our approach to the refuges for autumn 2020 as a result of the perceived increase in disturbance. I'm a little worried that we're doing actions on a perceived increase without having any understanding of what the level of increase of disturbances are, or what the nature of those disturbances are. So I would be interested to understand a little bit more about what has been going on, what sort of disturbances have been increasing, and to what level, and if there's any explanation for why that might be the case.
Neil, are you able to help on this, or indeed anyone else?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to continue. So yes, reports from the habitat mitigation officers, as well as the surveyor who's kind of monitoring the wildlife refuges with the survey work. We've essentially been recording more water-based disturbance this year. Of course, the report has not yet been kind of finalised for reporting through to committee. That will come at the next meeting. But essentially, I was receiving reports from the officers and the surveyors that we had kite surfers, windsurfers, power boats that were all kind of seen within the refuge whilst it was active. And that certainly wasn't the case in the previous year. So we are, we're seeing more disturbance, and therefore we're trying to address the ways in which we kind of get our messages across. We're now looking to work proactively with water sports operators in and around the area, and just to ensure that our messages are more kind of fully understood by everyone that uses the estuary.
Excellent. I'm pleased to hear that, but as I say, I'm very keen on actually seeing what the evidence is and what the disturbances are. So if that's forthcoming before we take any significant changes in action, that would be extremely good to understand, because it's about evidence, and it's about taking measures, and it's about understanding why we're taking the measures that we're taking. Sorry, Jeff, you trying to get in on this point? I have several other points.
Yeah,
in the report.
yeah. On that, it says perceived. I presume that's because up until now we haven't had that many patrol boats and the harbour master was getting into his job and stuff. So it's difficult to go back to what disturbance there was some years ago to what it was last year. Now we've got more surveillance and we've got more boats. We're going to be quite obviously going to be seeing more disturbance. So now you need to read into that report on that there's more perceived now, and against what was before. Now I used to use the estuary 15 years ago, and there was a lot of disturbance then, but no one knew about it. Back to you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on, section 236. This is in the this is the social media from the dog project. The simple number of stats, I think, is not usually a particularly useful way of recording social media. One of the things that I found very useful in other organizations that I am responsible for is to look at this as a yearly graph, because these things have all sorts of, and I think I even provided these details to somebody at the last meeting. So it would be far better, because we don't know whether these are significant or not. We don't know if it's a comparison from one period to another. These things vary throughout the year. So in terms of reporting the stats for social media, please could we have these represented across the year in graphical form? It's not a difficult thing to do. We've got the numbers. It's just a matter of drawing them up in a graph so we can see the trends on the graph. So with the influence that we're trying to achieve over social media, it is about seeing that that is going in the right direction, seeing that the graphs are going in the right place, and that will be far more useful, I feel, than simply a number, which in and of itself is
if I just draw your attention to the fact that he does actually talk about increases, you know, in percentages. What it doesn't say is increases compared with which other period. It doesn't. It says 6th of February till the 4th of March, but is it up 25% compared to January to February or to a similar period last year? So I think an element of clarification would be useful there without generating too much more work.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yep. Did you have further points?
Yeah, I found the Royal Haskonin survey fascinating. I thought that's a really useful piece of evidence that we have here. So coming down to the details of the disturbances, which begin on, I think it's page 29 of the report, where we've got the tables. There are interesting that the main disturbances that they observed were dog walkers with loose dogs. In fact, I see there was one dog walker with 7 loose dogs. Now that, I think, even exceeds the number of dogs you're supposed to be walking in your East Devon regulations. I'm not sure if it's a bylaw or whatever. I think we've got one of these new public space protection orders. So that's kind of interesting there. And we see also another dog walker on the duck pond. And then we see 2 dog walkers on the duck pond. And the only other thing that seems to disturb them is either helicopters or toots from the trains. Now, toots from the trains, there's nothing we can do. But I have noticed over the past 3 or 4 months an increase in the number of low-flying helicopters. I have before now looked from my house into the cockpit of a helicopter going over the estuary. Now, I'm about 100 meters above sea level, so these things are coming in pretty low. Now, I recall, Neil, before you mentioned that the ex-estuary was supposed to be off their flight paths. It clearly isn't. And we have the evidence here in the Haskonin survey because they have registered in here a couple of aeroplanes or helicopters, I can't remember. I saw it when I went through in one of theirs. Cranes. Anyway, they mentioned aircraft coming over. So clearly we need to do some more work to clear these as flight paths, because it is absolutely being used. Whether those helicopters are directly over the water or over the refuges or running over the train line, it's impossible to tell unless you're sitting above it to look down. But there seems to be a piece of work there that we need to do, communicating with the relevant authorities on air corridors.
Okay, thank you.
Was there any response from Neil? Because I know you were talking to them about aircraft and anything about the dogs. There we go, airplane flyover, helicopter flyover, disturbed. Item number, it's at time 1429 on page 36, helicopter flyover, 100 Brent geese alert, 20 Brent geese major flight. So the helicopters are disturbing the birds, and you really don't want a flock of geese flying up into a helicopter.
Yeah, okay, got that. Neil, have you got any comment on that?
Yes, so we have worked in partnership with the Accessory Management Partnership previously in talking to the military, in particular the Lympstone base, and we have endeavoured to work with our ecologists to ensure that the accessory in that lower part of the estuary is out of the flight path. What we have been told is that they take all reasonable measures to avoid the area, but on certain occasions, due to weather conditions, they consider that they have to fly through that area to reach their destination. So it is an issue that has been raised with the military. It's also following a kind of powered glider flight across the estuary, which resulted in quite a lot of significant disturbance. I have been talking to the Civil Aviation Authority about trying to establish the estuary and that part of the estuary as a kind of exclusion zone for aircraft. That is quite a significant undertaking, and I'm in talks with the Accessory Management Partnership about how we can take that forward. But from the response I'm getting, it will take some time before we can establish such an area.
I wish I'd taken pictures of all the helicopters coming over, but I can guarantee you during April, it was fantastic blue skies and clear air, and there were no other flights anywhere. And there was no reason other than the fact that they wanted to fly along the river, unless there were some hidden thermals that I'm obviously unaware of. So I think they're feeding us a line on that one. And I think that's something we need to push.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Just a second, Councillor Wrigley, if you wouldn't mind. If you do actually have examples of that, then I'm sure that would be helpful to have a note of dates and times, because specific evidence that Neil can then use to add to any feedback would be very useful, I'm quite sure.
I shall carry a pocketbook in future and make sure that I do that. I haven't taken any.
Thank you. Or make a note on your phone even, yeah. Okay, thank you. Did you have further points?
Yeah, just on the loose dogs. What are the plans? Because we've got several things there. People walking their dogs in the mud flats. That's clearly not a good thing. And what are we doing about that?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's ironic, really, because the whole scheme here has now established a tidal defence wall at the Imperial Recreation Ground. So part of the issue at the Imperial Recreation Ground was that diffuse access onto the foreshore straight out of the car was always an issue for us. You could park up, let your dog out of the car, and it would be straight onto the mud flats. With the construction of the defence scheme, that looks that it's no longer possible to do that. So in that respect, it's going to be a game changer in terms of shore-based disturbance for us. And of course, we will focus our attention with the habitat mitigation officers and in conjunction with East Devon Countryside and the Devon Loves Dogs officer to maintain a presence in this area and to ensure that people who are coming are challenged and are asked to not to go into the area in future.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Young.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, for that. Once the flood scheme is finished at Exmouth, I would think that there would be a possibility that we can get some extra signage up to advise on dogs. There's a limit of 5 dogs for any one person handling dogs in East Devon. So we should be picking up on anyone with more than 5. And I'm discussing through Woodbury Parish Council. I'm discussing about ambulance landing site at Exton. So I will speak to you, Neil, on that after the meeting. So we can discuss where and where not it should go. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any of the people attending from external organisations who wanted to make any comments on the business plan? Can't see any blue hands. No.
No, quite happy with
No.
Chair, we have
Okay.
Eleanor Ryland with her hand up.
Well, Councillor Ryland isn't a member of the committee, I'm afraid. I was talking about the other organisations like Natural England. We do have 2 recommendations, colleagues, which are that it's proposed that we note the progress made in delivering the 2019-20 annual business plan, and that we note the status of the mitigation measures from each of the plans, as well as explanations given for the measures subject to delay and revised completion dates. With the additional comments that have been made, are we content with those recommendations? Happy to agree them?
Yes, I'm happy.
Thank you. That is helpful. We then move on to agenda item 8, which is the financial report 2020. This is going to be provided by Naomi Hartner and Neil Harris, with an opportunity afterwards for questions and comments. Who's leading on this one, please? Is that you, Neil, again? Okay, thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Chair. If you bear with me, I have notes on my computer and it's just frozen.
With impeccable timing, as these things do.
Yeah, it's completely frozen, I'm afraid.
Do you want us to give you a minute, or?
It looks like it might be coming back.
Good.
It's a bit of a feature of our system remotely, and it stalls for about a minute usually.
Oh, does it? Right. Okay.
Neil's is the same as you scroll through things, it just stops.
Yeah. Speak sternly to it, Neil.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. This is an update on the current and future financial position of developer contributions, both collected and currently in the planning system for habitat regulations mitigation across the partner authorities. Please note that the forecasts and balances used in the report were compiled for the cancelled April meeting and therefore reflect the situation prior to lockdown. Due to the timetable for scheduling these reports and other obstacles to obtaining information, such as staff absences, it's not been possible to provide an updated forecast or balance. As is the theme throughout the reports in this agenda, the impacts of COVID-19 continue to be felt. It's too early to have confidence in any current financial forecasts at present. However, it's further recommended that the forecasts and balances are obtained and reported to the next meeting of the committee, which will also permit any changes to be made to the 5-year delivery plan as appropriate. Just running through the tables in the report, table 1 are the balances, so monies in the bank, less expenditure by zone and type as of March 2020. Table 2 is the potential income from consented permissions in the planning system as of March 2020. Now, table 3 is the heavily caveated 5-year forecast of potential income based on housing delivery forecasts, again, as at March prior to lockdown. Again, subject to change is table 4 with indicative 5-year income, expenditure and balance, which is based on the 2021 annual business plan reported later and the 5-year delivery plan. Table 5 shows mitigation measures from previous annual business plans currently subject to delay. As previously mentioned, these are all at Dawlish Warren, although not all are delayed as a result of the coastal realignment we've been witnessing. Again, that particular coastal realignment is reported in more detail in the 20 to 21 business report. Table 6 shows the projected and actual expenditure on measures applicable to all sites. The positive variance is accounted for with Q4 expenditure not yet reported. And lastly, table 7 is a summary of all site-specific measures, either completed or initiated, along with the expenditure on them to date, and where appropriate, the total remaining budget as outlined in the mitigation strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Naomi, did you have anything to add?
Nothing further from me, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Young, do you want to lead off if you have any comments on this report?
No, it all looks hang on, it all looks really good. Yeah, I've got nothing to question on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wrigley?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I think we're wise to keep an eye on the house building, because I would anticipate with a 20% reduction in GDP in the country that we are likely to see a housing downturn. We're very likely to see a slow delivery of housing, and therefore we have to look very carefully at the future projections for income from CIL, as I'm sure we're all aware. So I think this is something we need to keep a very close eye on, but I'm not sure just the next meeting will be sufficient. I think this is something we need to be aware of and keep in our sights every time we meet and talk for the next period of time, however long it may be, because I think we don't know how things are going to settle down, but then I think everybody knows that. I'd like to...
Yeah, just before you move on from that, Councillor Wrigley, yeah, I'm inclined to agree on that. It's we are in such unusual times, and I completely agree that, you know, the next 3 months isn't necessarily going to provide a great deal of additional clarity, but I think possibly the request to our colleagues in our respective authorities that as and when information is available on CIL payments coming in or failing to come in as expected, that information can be fed through as swiftly as is feasible, so that the stats that we do have are as accurate as they can be, and the rest of it is crystal ball territory.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yep, okay.
And I think the other thing that has, so in terms of the financials, I'm not quite sure which part to ask this one on. So during the lockdown period, when we couldn't go out and talk to people, were any of the staff furloughed? And if the staff weren't furloughed, why not? And what lessons have we learned during the lockdown about using social media? I mean, you mentioned social media, you mentioned you had a borrowed extra staff person. So that really should have boosted our social media tremendously. And I think even now people have become much more online with their habits. So is there any change in thinking between, for example, the spending that we're putting into social media compared to the spending that we're doing for physical signs? How are we reacting to our change of habits of people? I mean, later on in this pack of documents, we're talking about, quite rightly, about changing people's behavior. And I think as we are all adapting to doing things more socially isolated, what are we doing to move in that direction? I think Neil, you mentioned earlier that people are reluctant to have the conversations. And certainly if somebody is approaching me to come up and talk to me while I'm out and about walking a dog, if I had a dog, which I don't anymore, then I would probably shy away from them as well. And I don't really wish to encourage unknown people coming up and talking to me in this environment. So we have a lot of change of our habits to consider. And what have we learned in the last 3 months, and how is that changing what we're doing going forward?
Okay, thank you for that. Neil, did you have any response to that?
Yes, yeah, I'd prepared a response because I knew that the question had been asked about the lockdown period. As host authority and employers, East Devon District Council HR department took a decision based on the facts as they were known at the time, and in liaison with senior management, to put the team of 3.5 full-time employees on furlough. That included myself, the Habitat Mitigation officers, and the part-time Devon Loves Dogs officer. A precautionary approach was taken as per government guidance and in the overriding interest of the health and safety of employees. For the site-based staff, furlough started on the 7th of April, ending 10 weeks later on the 15th of June. I began furlough on the 13th of April, returning to work 5 weeks later on the 18th of May. HR looked at all project-based tasks, and as funding for the strategy, including the salaries, is strictly linked to the provision of mitigation, these roles are therefore not core funded. This meant that staff could not easily be redeployed to other non-mitigation duties, such as council tax, business rate calls, that kind of thing. There would also remain the issue of the team undertaking work for their host authority, when of course they serve all 3 partner authorities. Site-based staff had already been removed from all public-facing work due to concerns regarding health and safety. Their roles, whilst valuable, could not be categorised as essential during a global health pandemic. Therefore, due to the nature of the engagement work, which accounts for 80 to 90% of their time, it's difficult to maintain a reasonable workload, and the team was running out of work. Our communications officer, who helps as and when she can, when other duties permit, maintain the social media presence for us throughout the duration of the furlough period, but it certainly wasn't the kind of attention that can be given to social media by full-time staff. A measured decision was taken at the time of the lockdown. Nobody could predict what was going to happen next. The key consideration was keeping everyone safe in line with government restrictions, following the practice of many other countryside organisations and local authority departments. My workload on returning was to update the reports to committee in time to allow for the 6-week reporting schedule, and thereafter my work is focused on updating risk assessments, liaising with our partners, and ensuring provision of PPE to enable staff to return to work safely. Just on the online content, and we've obviously noticed and we're well aware that we have a more restricted and limited way in which the team are able to work on site at the moment, although they are carrying out those duties quite successfully. Another key work stream has been a real concerted effort from the whole team to improve and innovate when it comes to social media and the website. We're also developing an e-newsletter with the intention of directing online audiences to varied content across all of the platforms that we offer. So both Will and Amelia have been doing informational update videos on social media. They've been very well received. So we're really trying to make sure that we're reaching as many people as we possibly can through all the different ways that we're able to.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. That's good. I'm surprised you didn't lead with that, I must confess. I would have thought that would be something you'd have put at the top of the report, but never mind. I suppose it's the limitation of the 6-weekly report cycle, isn't it? So what does that change in terms of behaviour going ahead? What are we doing differently now going forward was the other part of my big question.
Do you mean specifically in terms of on-site work or online?
I mean, generally, I want you to answer the sort of generality as opposed to the specifics.
Yeah, Yeah, we're talking about the finance report at the moment.
Okay, I'll save this for later.
Yeah, so I'd just say I think we can ask Neil questions that relate to the financial situation.
I'm very pleased the furlough was taken up. That's exactly right, especially since the X itself was closed for 2 or 3 months. I can't remember exactly how long, to all activity. How much did we save because of the furloughing on the budgets? I couldn't see that reflected in the budgets unless it was in there and I missed it. Or is that come later?
I was going to say I suspect that information may not have been processed through the council yet, but I may be putting words into Neil's mouth. He may have the figures written down on a bit of paper.
No, I had asked for those figures just to be able to provide a verbal update to the committee. Unfortunately, due to staff being extremely busy at the moment, I haven't had that information. But of course, it will be, well, it's 10 weeks, 2.5 months of full-time employee, and 5 weeks of another full-time employee. So whatever that equates to, unfortunately, I can't give a specific figure.
Yeah.
It'll help us in the reduction in CIL coming forward. So that's got to be good. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly will. Did you have any further comments on the finance reports?
No, I think that's it mostly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do have recommendations, colleagues. It is recommended that we note the update of the overall financial position, including contributions received, expenditure and anticipated contributions from SIL and signed 106. Secondly, that we note the potential for significant changes to anticipated contributions due to the disruption to housing delivery as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. 3, that we note the expenditure against budget for the 2019-2020 annual business plan and the reasons given for any variance. And finally, that we receive a further report regarding anticipated contributions at the next meeting of the committee. Are we happy to agree those recommendations?
I'm happy with that.
Chair,
Yes.
might I add an ongoing monitoring comment in there as we discussed?
I'm not sure technically whether we can add it to a recommendation, but I think the officers have taken that on board. Yes, I'm seeing nods. Yes.
Okay, that's fine then. I'm
okay.
happy.
Thank you for that. Agenda item 9 is the Risk Register Report 2020, which will be provided by, guess who? Neil Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report lists, categorises and prioritises the apparent risks to the delivery of the strategy, along with the control measures in place which indicate how the risks are to be treated. It's no surprise to anyone that the first risk to note, and it's the first severe risk that we've had to delivery of the strategy, is that posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, as stated in section 1.2, it's important to note that the purpose of a risk register is to record the details of identified risks and the plans for treating them, not necessarily that the risks will be fully realised or are expected to occur. Having said that, the pandemic has and will continue to affect all risk categories in the register, including financial, operational, strategic, and our people. Ensuring the health and safety of our public-facing team and the public is our #1 priority, and we've adapted our approach accordingly. As covered in previous reports, financial forecasts will no longer be accurate, and we will make sure that updated information is reported as and when necessary, and this will also allow for any necessary changes to be made to the 5-year plan. The report also lists 4 risks categorised as major according to their importance and or potential impact to the strategy, which relate to delivery of SANGs at Cranbrook, significant changes or amendments to the habitat regulations following departure from the EU, delays to mitigation measures from annual business plans as reported previously, and any issues which may occur in implementing HREC decisions at a local level. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, Councillor Wrigley, do you want to start with any comments you have on the risk register, please?
I mean, I love risk registers because one always goes through and picks out a few sort of random bits and pieces and tries to go. And as far as it goes, I mean, I think it is what it is. I don't think I have any significant comments on it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Young. I'm
okay on it. It's looking good.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, given the uncertainty of the times, it's almost like, yeah, we're back, I guess, say, into crystal ball territory. Who would have predicted this time last year that this is the kind of risk register we'd be considering now?
Yeah.
Okay, and Natural England didn't have any comments when they received the report. I'm assuming that still is the case. Nothing further to add.
No, that's fine. We're happy.
Thank you. Okay, we have recommendations here. It's proposed that as a committee, we note the identification, categorisation and prioritisation of risks as recorded in the accompanying risk register associated with the delivery of the South East Devon European Site Mitigation Strategy. Who writes these things? Notes in particular the severe risk posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, that we note the control measures in place to mitigate the risks identified, and that we will receive an updated risk register report in 6 months. Are we happy with those recommendations?
Yeah, I think that'll be Neil Harris that writes them.
I'll let him off. It's a great tongue twister though, Neil. Okay, colleagues, are we happy with those recommendations?
Chair, I think I'd rather see an updated risk register at the next meeting, because the current situation is so volatile that I think it would be careless of us not to keep an eye on any set of existing risks and changing risks as we move forward.
So we're proposing to amend that final point to an updated risk register in 3 months.
Indeed.
Is that acceptable, Councillor Young? You happy with that?
If Neil can handle that within 3 months, I'll be happy with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how much is likely to change in 3 months, but it might be radically different, or it might not. It's
and so it's either a trivial task or everything's changed and you need to look at it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we're agreeing those recommendations with the amendment to 3 months. Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for that. So agenda item 10 is the annual business plan and 5-year delivery plan. This again is going to be Naomi and Neil, or Neil and Naomi. Neil's leading on this one again. Thank you.
Yes, it's the sound of my voice again, Chair. Thank you. Again, the report comes with caveats relating to COVID-19, understandably, specifically changes to financial forecasts and the resultant impact on the 5-year delivery plan. However, there remains sufficient confidence in the current financial position to recommend a range of measures for delivery within the next year. As reported in section 1.2, the business plan and 5-year plan is considered the most appropriate course of action with the best information we have available at the moment. And 1.3 recommends that the 5-year plan is reassessed at the next meeting. Section 2, I kind of hinted at this earlier on, concerns the situation at Dawlish Warren and the continuing effects of the 2017 beach management scheme undertaken by the EA and Teambridge District Council. 2.3 points out that the site has experienced increased levels of erosion from the sea. A degree of change was modelled by the EA, but levels on site have been earlier and in excess of what was expected. It's therefore recommended that there is a brief pause in any new significant spend on projects at the Warren, which could be affected by storm action and erosion. The intention here is to ensure that investments are as effective as possible, both in terms of cost and mitigation impact. The report goes on to state in 2.5, there's a clear need to understand what evidence there is of potential impacts to protected species and habitats in the estuary as a whole as a result of the scheme. Although this is a wider issue than the recreational disturbance which concerns the committee, nonetheless, there's a degree of overlap. So I'm proposing to work with Team Ridge, the EA and Natural England to arrange a meeting of stakeholders to understand what further changes might be anticipated, if that's known, and over what timescales, and that the outcome of the discussions, along with any amended plan of mitigation for the Warren, is reported to the committee no later than July next year. Section 3 concerns proposals to carry out a phased approach to implement a number of the visitor access improvements on the Pebblebed Heaths, as approved in the January meeting of the executive. Recent and significant increases to visitor pressure, both during and after lockdown, have re-emphasized the accuracy of and need for these mitigation measures and improvements. It's proposed that improvements to 4 car parks are carried out in the next business year, and Appendix B, apologies that's not clear in the report, but this is shown on agenda page 88, illustrates the estimated timescales and investments required to deliver all the improvements over the next 3 years. And appendices C through F illustrate the current aerial maps, which show the current layout of each area, and proposed future layouts for each of the recommended improvement areas. Section 4 outlines recommendations for spend on initiatives aimed at positive behavioural change, again as reported in the January meeting. So initiatives include a new gazebo for the habitat mitigation officers, updated signage at the Imperial Recreation Ground following completion of that phase of the tidal defence work, and a redesigned website to enhance our online presence, making the site more attractive for visitors. With an estimated investment of £11,000, sections 4.2 and 4.6 report explains how this expenditure can be met through savings already realised on another project, and whilst maintaining approximately 13k savings from that project. Lastly, Section 5 proposes a change of vehicle for the habitat mitigation officers. Whilst acknowledging that savings of approximately £380,000 over the lifetime of the strategy had been made, the type of vehicle they're currently using was based on a number of presumptions about the use of that vehicle from the strategy. Section 5.3 outlines it's now evident that the demands on the vehicle aren't as expected, and therefore we consider it beneficial both in terms of cost savings and a reduction in carbon emissions to change to a smaller vehicle such as a Citroen Berlingo, as is already road tested by the Devon Loves Dogs project officer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Young, do you want to start with any comments you might have or questions on this?
Only an observation that they've started on doing the signage for the car parks on the Pebblebed Heaths, and they're looking very smart. And the 5-year plan looks exactly as I would have expected, very neat and tidy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wrigley.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, there's a few specific bits and pieces throughout here. So I think in section 2.3, we say there are unconfirmed reports regarding the sand allegedly as a result of the scheme when we're talking about Dawlish Warren and the movement of sand. Well, we know those reports are confirmed and are because of the scheme. So we saw that when the Environment Agency themselves told us that there is, what was it from memory, 25 centimetres of sand in certain areas within the ex-estuary. So we know that is a fact. It's not unconfirmed and it's not speculative. It is actual and it is mapped. So we do know that that has been happening. So I'm a little worried that we are still unsure about what's going on there. but I think it is wise to hold back from doing anything around there until the whole thing settles down. So I think that's fine. But I think we do need to understand, and this was one of the questions that I was asking, what are the impacts of that sand having moved into the estuary? Now, I understand that it is not our responsibility. I understand that it's not our issue that the sand has moved in there, and it's not up to us to do anything about cleaning it up. That's the Environment Agency if they're going to, although we might want to lean on them to see what they do about it. I think it is up to us to look at and try to understand what the impact of that sand is. Has it, for example, covered over any of the, whatever it is, the grass? What's the name of the grass that we're protecting? The underwater grass that the birds eat. Has it impacted any of that? Has it changed any of the layouts? What else has it done? And we don't really yet know. And I think it is incumbent upon us to look at what impact that has upon our work. I'm not suggesting it's our responsibility to do anything about it, but it certainly will impact things that we are doing. And I think I'd like to see a little bit more reporting on quite what's going on as a result of that sand moving, as the Environment Agency have told us. There was a long, for the benefit of others who may not have been there last time, at the Ex-Estuary Forum in Exeter, there was a presentation from Martin Davis of the Environment Agency about the movement of the sand, and he was showing where it was over 25 centimetres as opposed to under 25 centimetres. So there is some significant changes going on there. In terms of the other bits and pieces, using a smaller car, fantastic. I mean, I'm not normally one for encouraging buying more cars, but swapping out the SUV for a Berlingo, yep, absolutely. I think that's a, as they would say, a no-brainer. I think that's very good indeed. I haven't actually had an answer, come to think about it, for the question I asked back in April last year about some of the activities of the SUV late at night in Dawlish on a Sunday evening. I think that's going to be far better to have a more usable vehicle like a Berlingo. I think that's great. But in terms of some of the other spending in here, particularly things like the website and the signs and the car parks, what I don't see in this report is anything that will measure their success. Now, I'm not talking in terms of, yep, changing the website has saved 3 birds. That's clearly impossible. But changing the website is very easy to measure the impact. Now, we had a revamp of the website relatively recently, within the last year or 18 months. So what is it that we're trying to achieve by changing the website round? What has been the performance of the website? What are the Google Analytics and the graphs showing that? And what are the expectations of changing the redesign? Is it to make things within 2 clicks, 3 clicks of the top? Is it to have a more attractive design so we get increased visitor numbers? In which case, let's set some targets, some measures of success. So when we look at this again, we can say, yep, we've invested 5,000 in a website redesign and we've got 50% more users, 100 more clicks. They're spending more time on the site.
Yeah, we get it.
Good, fantastic. So concrete measures of success for each of these actions is what I would like to see. You know, the car parks, we had an excellent section about stopping the people parking in the wrong places. So what is it now and what are we hoping it will be? And does that measure actually measure up? So we know what we're trying to achieve with these things sometimes. Let's make sure we can put some measures of success in there.
Okay, should we give Neil a chance to respond on those, because there's quite a list there.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Taking each one in turn, I have been trying to get in touch with the EA about the findings in the estuary. I know that bathymetric surveys have been undertaken, so I'll redouble my efforts to talk to Martin Davies on that. I think in terms of the impact on our work, it's difficult until we know exactly what is mapped, how it's going to affect the species. But I think the main thing for us is still to tackle the recreational disturbance. So even if, for example, the eelgrass was covered in certain areas, or the mussel beds were covered over and that affected, populations of birds, I think it's still our core business to be addressing recreational impact. So fewer birds on the estuary means that we need to work even harder to prevent recreational disturbance to them. So I'm a bit wary of spending too much time measuring something which is, arguably the remit of the EA. And
sorry, I wasn't asking us to measure it, because you're exactly right. That is the remit of the EA. They have scanned it. They have given it to us. What I'm asking is for us to think about what that might do to what we're trying to work. If, for example, it's made a whole new beach somewhere, then there's a new recreational habit that will come up. So what are the impacts upon what's happened that we need to worry about in our line of work is what I'm asking for.
Okay, that's certainly something that I can pick up with the EA in our work when we talk to them about the beach management scheme going forwards. The car, great. Yes, happy to carry on with that recommendation. I think we had answered. I gave an answer at the previous meeting when the question was asked about why it was there late in the evening, and the response was that essentially they work after hours sometimes to catch people who may be going out in the evening to recreate at the Warren, to take their dogs on walks. So long-term residents who aren't necessarily on message with dog disturbance do choose to go to the Warren when they know that rangers won't be there. So on a regular basis, our wardens will be there after hours just to kind of ensure that we capture that audience. In terms of measuring the impact and the website, I mean, I think the report in 4.5, it does reflect that we had a very minimal budget when we first established this for the wildlife refuge consultation, and it hasn't really been redesigned. It's just the titles have been changed with new wording to try and cover more of the work that's being doing. So again, what we're trying to do is make it a more user-friendly site, make it more attractive for people to come to, make it more interactive, and I'm guided by the work and the guidance which our communications officer can give us from time to time. So that's really what we're trying to do, and just promote our key messages in a better way. And to
sorry Neil, I'm not suggesting.
Hang on. Let's let Neil get to the end of the points that he's making. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just worried he thinks I'm suggesting the work isn't necessary. That's not what I'm suggesting.
Neil, do you want to carry on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Absolutely agree. We need to know if it's working as much as possible. So again, I'll work with our communications officer. I think we do have Google Analytics on the current website, and we can look at setting some measures for improvements and what we want to see in terms of interactions going forward.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry to interrupt earlier. I do apologise. I was just concerned that Neil might think I was criticising and suggesting the work wasn't necessary. Clearly, it is necessary to improve the website. As we were talking earlier, we need to be doing more through our website, through our social media. So absolutely, 100%, yes, it needs to be done. But as you're, so I think you're agreeing, we need to set up the measures of success. What does good look like for this project? And how do we know that this project has achieved its aims in and of itself? And again, I'm not suggesting that this it will have a cumulative effort on the wider goals and aims of this whole organization. But in and of itself, we must have some positive messages, positive measures of success and targets for it to hit, to ensure that we are doing the right things in
Yeah.
each of these actions.
Okay, and I think we just need to bear in mind the comment made earlier about the furloughing of staff and the fact that the comms was being dealt with by someone who wasn't a specialist. I imagine the website update is being developed by specialists, but yes, we do need to know what the result of improvements and changes have been. Otherwise, as you rightly say, we're just going, well, we did it, but we're not sure why. I do agree with you about the change in the vehicle. I mean, if we get to a point where we could actually have an electric vehicle, I think that would be even better. But I'm kind of mindful of the point that a lot of our car parks probably don't have electricity supply, so we can't put charging points there, at least not at the moment, unless somebody comes up with a solar charging point and battery storage, which isn't necessarily that far away, but again, that would be something useful potentially to explore in the future. I noticed that Natural England made a couple of comments which are included in the report. I was going to ask Ali if she had anything further to add, but she's temporarily disappeared. So we'll take it that she probably doesn't, other than the comments made. And we have got 4 recommendations.
Sorry, Chair, I did have one more specific point. I do apologise. I know I'm the painful one who always brings up all the points and the questions. Just in the spreadsheets at the end of the report, in the one that is the first one, which is coloured, I'm not quite sure what that is, whether it's a pale orange.
Can you give us a page reference?
Page number 82, I think it is, 82. And I'd be delighted if somebody could tell me what that colour is described as, because I'm not sure I can. I'm curious to know why the boat costs us £7,000 a year to run. That strikes me as an awful lot to run the boat.
Neil, do you know why the boat costs £7,000 to run? I would say beige in answer to your first question.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I offer peach?
Peach.
Okay, peachy beige. Right, do we know why the boat costs £7,000 to run?
Moving on. Yes. So that's the figure that's outlined in the strategy. That accounts for the mooring fees, Exmouth Marina, also accounts for fuel, insurance, and officer training. I'm pleased to report that in the 2 years we've been operating the boat, we haven't reached that full £7,000 spend, but it does provide a certain amount of overage to allow for anti-fouling, any repairs that needed to the boat, and so on. Okay,
does that answer the question, Councillor Wrigley?
Yeah, still strikes me as an immense amount of money to run a boat, but there we go. I don't think I'd run a boat.
Well, if you want to moor it outside your house and look after it for less than that, put in a bid.
Oh yeah, actually that would work.
Okay, I did ask Ali, did you have anything else to add from, I know your comments are actually in the report. Is there anything additional on that? No. Okay, thank you.
No, that's fine. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Okay, so we have recommendations, colleagues, that it's recommended that we approve the 2020 to 2021 annual business plan, Appendix A, and the commitments and actions set out therein. That we note the updated 5-year delivery plan, also shown in Appendix A. That we note the potential disruption to the delivery of the annual business plan and the 5-year delivery plan as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that we receive a report by July 2021 relating to any proposed changes to the mitigation strategy regarding Dawlish Warren and the ex-estuary in relation to the Dawlish Warren Beach Management Scheme. Are we happy with those recommendations?
Chair, not as they stand, I'm afraid.
Okay, so you're proposing an amendment, which is?
That we accept this now, but we ask for measures of success for each of the investments outlined in the report.
Okay, Councillor Young, are you happy with that amendment?
Yeah, I'm happy with that amendment. I don't know how you're going to measure the success of the car parks, because we're not increasing the car parks, we're just changing them around.
I think that's quite straightforward, because we were shown last time about cars parking in undesirable places. We know the survey of how many cars were doing it then, And after it's done, we know the survey of how many cars are parking in the wrong places afterwards. I think that's quite straightforward.
Comment?
Okay, are Democratic Services colleagues content they've got sufficient wording on that? Yes?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you. Okay, so we all in agreement on that, the three of us? Yes, yes. Okay, thank you. Now I move on to agenda item 11, which is refreshments at Dawlish Country Sid Park, it says on my, but I think it means Countryside Park. And this is a report from Fergus Pate from Teambridge. Fergus, I think I saw you on the call. Are you happy to take us through this, please?
I am. And yeah, it is Dawlish Countryside Park. So I'll keep it brief. The report's brief. You'll see it's proposed to trial the provision of refreshment facilities at Dawlish Countryside Park. The scope of those facilities is described in section 3 of the report. In essence, we're talking about a modest refreshments concession. It's Teambridge that currently manage the award-winning Countryside Park. And it's proposed that authorities delegated to Teambridge to tender for an operator of this concession. Longer term, the committee needs to receive a report on, well, within the next few months, in fact, on the long-term management arrangements for the park. But for now, we're talking about delegated authority for Teambridge to make these arrangements. The proceeds from any rent would come back to the partnership, net of Teambridge's fees for advertising, securing and managing the lease. There's potential that this is an opportunity to enhance the attractiveness of an already attractive countryside park. It's popular already, but it could also be a route to disseminating the message of the partnership, and another way of getting our important wildlife protection message out. And that's something that we'd expect as part of inviting bids for taking on this concession. But there are risks as well, and Natural England have pointed those out. This is a fairly not unknown but fairly novel approach to introduce refreshments as part of a SANGS, a suitable alternative natural green space. So the recommendation before you is, as I said, to delegate authority for Teambridge to procure that lease, to proceed to recover the proceeds net of Teambridge's administrative expenses. But the point I was coming on to was to receive a further report on whether to extend the lease in around a year's time, once we've been able to gather information on the success of the concession, whether there have been any unintended consequences, and then make a decision on whether to proceed on a longer term basis beyond that first trial year. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, yes, I think this is quite straightforward. I think this is quite an interesting proposal, personally, because we're talking about kind of countryside, and I think kind of the balance between pure unadulterated countryside and something that has more facilities, if you like, that you might expect in a different kind of environment. But I think, given that this is a proposal for a 1-year experiment, it's worth doing. One of the points I was going to make was the one that you raised, Fergus, that actually if you get the right people providing it, that it has the potential to help information wise. I would hate to be influencing, but it would be really nice if it was an independent provider of beverages and homemade cake, rather than I can't imagine a huge multinational is going to be interested, but something where maybe a sustainable vehicle, or the kind of credentials that would be in line with what we're trying to do in protecting the environment. And again, I mean, it could be it could be a job opportunity for for someone who is looking for additional business. And the other point I'd make is that if there actually is a regular presence on site, again, it can help to actually dissuade kind of inappropriate antisocial behaviour, you know, dog walkers with, you know, 7 dogs, or people, you know, littering or not taking their dog waste home with them. You know, if that is, particularly if it's the same person or people there, they become part of the eyes and ears. So I would be supportive of this. And again, if we can have people encouraging people to kind of bring their own reusable cups rather than generating huge amounts of rubbish, that would be good. Okay, that's my bit. It's on your patch, Councillor Wrigley. Do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, it's virtually on my doorstep. It's just over the hill from me. In fact, I often run through the top of the country park when I actually manage to get out running, which is far less frequently than I should do in this lockdown. Some people got fat. I've just got fat, but never mind. Yeah, I think this is an excellent idea. I think you're right, Councillor Sutton, about having eyes and ears there. I think that is a really valuable addition. And I think having it as a distribution point for the various sort of literature and bits and pieces and information is also fantastic. I would like to pick up your point on reusable cups. Since we now have a plastic-free Dawlish and we have single-use plastic-free, I would like to ask that this concession be as much as possible single-use plastic-free, and look at its environmental impact in that same way. So yes, I would be strongly supportive of this. Thank you.
Councillor Young.
Yeah, I've made the same comments here. Green friendly cafe, any chance of getting education about dog walking and what else is going on in the country park, what else is going on in the area. So it's sort of a mini education, information and refreshments, and making sure it's green. Okay.
Okay, and if you need a mystery shopper, I'm happy to volunteer when this comes to pass. Okay, we've got recommendations that we delegate authority to Teambridge District Council to procure a lease for refreshments to be provided at Dawlish Countryside Park in accordance with the parameters set out in section 3, to recover the proceeds from the lease as a contribution towards the Executive Committee's budget. The annual amount recovered should exclude reasonable administrative expenses of Teambridge, reasonable note, yeah, Teambridge District Council, and receive a future report on whether to extend the lease for refreshments beyond the first year of operation in due course. So are we happy with that? Yep. Okay, that's great. So so let us know what you find out. Fergus, please don't let it be a multinational. Sorry, did I say that out loud? Okay, I think that brings us to the end of the agenda, unless somebody else is going to tell me differently. Let me just check. Yep. We don't have a date for the next meeting, as far as I can see. So, if I can thank everybody for their help. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers who have helped us organise this and run it efficiently, and also to your colleagues backstage who've helped in preparing the reports. Particular thanks to Councillor Young, who stepped in at very short notice, but I think I should note that in case you didn't see it on the chat, that Councillor Ledger has sent his apologies. It was, as we suspected, technical difficulties on his part, and I know how frustrating it is trying to get into a meeting and not making it, so we look forward to seeing him next time. Thank you, Councillor Wrigley, and also thank you to, I think there's quite a gallery of East Devon councillors in on the call, so thank you for your attendance, and see you next time.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.